Think about our planet for a second. It's just teeming with life, right? We're talking millions upon millions of different living things, from bacteria so tiny you can't see them, all the way up to the blue whale, the biggest animal that has ever lived. It's a lot. So that leads to a pretty big question.
How on earth do you even begin to get a handle on all of that? I mean, how do you study it or even just talk about it without getting completely lost in the sheer variety? Well, it turns out scientists figured out a way, and the solution they came up with is actually pretty genius.
You see, to make any sense of it, they needed a system. Think about it like trying to find a single book in a massive library, where all the books are just piled up on the floor. It would be impossible, right? You need to organize them. And that's exactly what classification does for the living world.
And this, right here, is the core idea. At its heart, classification is just organizing. It's the art of putting living things into groups based on what they have in common, looking for shared features and characteristics that connect them.
Now, this might sound all formal and scientific, but I guarantee you do this kind of thing all the time without even realizing it. So let's start with a few examples that are probably going to feel really familiar.
Okay, check these out. You've got all these different shapes, sizes, and colors, but your brain probably took about half a second to go, yep, those are all fish. It just feels obvious.
But wait a minute. How did you know that? What was going on in your head? We weren't just guessing. You were actually using the basic rules of classification, probably without even noticing.
Because all of these creatures tick a certain set of boxes. They all live in the water, they breathe with gills, they have scales and fins, they're cold-blooded, and they lay soft eggs. See? It's that whole combination of traits that puts them squarely in the fish category.
All right, round two. Here we've got a snake, a lizard, and a tortoise. Again, they look pretty different from each other, but we have this instinct that, yep, they all belong together as reptiles.
And just like the fish, it's because there's another checklist. They've got scales, not fur. Their skin is dry. They have little ear holes instead of big floppy ears. They're cold-blooded, and they tend to lay eggs. These are the clues scientists follow to group them together. And this is the whole secret sauce right here. This simple idea, grouping things by what they have in common, is the key. It works for amphibians, for birds, for mammals. It's the fundamental principle we use to organize the entire incredible tree of life.
So, this is a great idea, but for it to be useful for science, someone had to turn it from an intuitive concept into a real, formal system. And that brings us to one very important person.
This is Carl Linnaeus. Back in the 1700s, he's the guy who took this idea and built a whole structured system around it. You could say he basically invented the Dewey Decimal System, but for all of nature. And what he created was this amazing hierarchy, kind of like a ladder with 8 major rungs. You start at the very top with domain, which is super broad, and you get more and more specific as you go down through kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and finally, you land on one single species. Every step down is like zooming in closer and closer.
And here's where it gets really cool. We can actually find our own address in this system. We start in the domain eukaryote because we're multicellular. Then the kingdom Animalia, since our cells have a nucleus. We're in the phylum Chordata because, hey, we've got backbones. We belong to the class Mammalia, we have hair, we produce milk. Then the order Primates, with our flat faces, then family Hominid, the human-like creatures, all the way down to our very own genus Homo and species Sapiens. Each step perfectly pinpoints our unique spot in the grand scheme of things.
So, we've seen how animals like us fit into this ladder. But the animal kingdom, well, that's just one chapter in a much, much bigger story. Let's zoom back out and look at the highest levels of organization.
Scientists often divide all of life into these 5 huge groups called kingdoms. And as you can see, Animalia, the group we've been focused on, is just one slice of this incredible pie. You've also got plants, fungi, and a couple of kingdoms for all the microscopic stuff.
And each kingdom has its own fundamental way of living. Plants are the planet's solar panels. They make their own food. Animals, well, we eat other things to get our energy. Fungi are the great decomposers, breaking everything down. And the other 2 kingdoms are home to a mind-boggling world of mostly single-celled life. It's just amazing.
Okay, so you've learned the rules of the game, you understand the system. I think it's time for a final test. This is where we see just how powerful this way of thinking really is.
All right, you're the scientist. Take a good look at this animal. It lives in the water,
It has fins, it has that sleek, streamlined body. Your first gut instinct is probably screaming fish, right? Seems like an open and shut case.
But this is exactly why looks can be deceiving. Let's dig deeper than just what we see on the surface. On the left, yeah, it has all those things that look like fish traits. But on the right, those are the biological facts. This animal breathes air with lungs, not gills. It gives birth to live babies. The mothers make milk to feed them, and if you look really close, it even has some tiny hairs.
So, what does our checklist tell us now? It tells us that, unbelievably, a dolphin is a mammal. It's more closely related to a mouse, an elephant, or even you and me than it is to a tuna. How cool is that?
And that really is the perfect takeaway here. Real classification isn't about making a snap judgment based on what something looks like. It's about being a detective and digging for the real clues.
And that, ultimately, is the real magic of this system. It helps us see past the surface and uncover the deep, hidden connections that link all living things together. It's a tool that reveals the true, epic story of life on Earth, all neatly organized in one grand and absolutely incredible filing system.